Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Best of Three. A little bit different start today. TH was on a bit of a heater before we got going, so we've got a nice little rolling start to open up today's conversation. Thanks for rocking with us, and enjoy the show.
So tennis is a microcosm of life. We have seen the millennials, in my opinion, and this, I'm going to call it, the generation after that, I'm going to call it Gen Z, for lack of a better term, that, in my opinion, has lacked the wherewithal to have the same work ethic and to be as hungry as past champions. I'm talking tennis, but of course, microcosm of life is also very apparent. It used to be that a player was only deemed a true champion if they could defend the same slam they won. It used to be a player was only crowned a future great when they had beaten the future great, handily some would say, and then passed that torch and then went on to win what the great had done. I feel like we're in a level now where if that player does good, has a good win against said player, we're donning praise, we're heaping accolades, and quite frankly, in my opinion, way too soon, giving out the contract, the various sponsorships that beget a top player. And my problem with that is, as you start seeing these players start to fade 1, 2, 3 years in, you really start to miss that former top player whose level of play transcended the actual tennis calendar. I know we're going to venture more into the WTA today instead of more the ATP, but once again, I'd be remiss not to mention Serena and the post-GOAT era. In some notes that I was writing down myself in preparation for this, I thought that WTA is about 3 to 5 years ahead of the men's game in the post-GOAT era, and how it's reeled in a sense for 2 or 3 years. You have to throw the pandemic year in there, but that's the unfortunate benchmark because let's face it, Serena was getting older around that time. I looked it up. Her first slam was 1998. So you look at that 20-year, arguably 22-year span, which is phenomenal, first of all. If she had done what she did in 12 years, we'd still be astounded.
Right.
The fact that she was relevant 18 years post-child, I mean, was just, that puts her in the category of the Yvonne Goolagons and the others who were just otherworldly. And then that she was still relevant at 40, playing against kids literally half her age was just you can't say enough about it. But for now, enough about Serena. What does that mean for the player since? And I look at that 2021 final, and I'll cue you up here. Leylah Fernandez and Emma Raducanu had a phenomenal tournament. I mean, just played their butts off, look good. You saw the future of tennis coming into play, into focus. This is what tennis is going to be like. Where tennis is in good hands. I mean, they just played their way to the final, had a great final. I mean, the girls were just playing ball, happy in the moment, just feeling themselves, and just you saw raw talent and energy and youth. It's been 3+ years since we've seen Raducanu and Fernandez in a final, let alone a semi, or even a quarter to my brief overview of a Grand Slam. And so then the question, my handoff to you, what's with the youth in the game? One. Number two, post-GOAT era. Is there a 2 or 3 year skid while the players find themselves? Number three, going forward, the vacuum has now filled. I'll borrow a term from you. The matrix has been reloaded. And now, where are we going forward?
I'm really excited about this topic. I think we spend a lot of time talking about about men's tennis, and men's tennis tends to get a lot of the airtime, a lot of the space when we're talking about tennis, especially professionally. But like right now, to your point about the women's game being maybe 3 to 4 years ahead of the men's game, I find myself more interested, especially earlier on in majors, with what's going on in the women's tournament, mostly because there are so many different players or characters that are right there and able to make a run, right? There's so much more opportunity for the unknown, for the unbelievable on the women's side, where there really just is no room for that on the men's side. And as a tennis fan, it makes it more fun to watch. It makes it almost more fun to follow. But to your point about, we're gonna talk a little bit today about some of the themes and trends we saw this year on the WTA side and what we think that means moving forward into the new year. The dearth of players under the age of 21 ranked inside the top 50, right? That's kind of I think that's the thing that really jumped out to both of us as we're looking back on this year. You can take the Grand Slam champions out of it for this particular conversation right now, but you mentioned Raducanu and you mentioned Fernandez, the two finalists from the 2021 U.S. Open final. I mean, you could even put in Bianca Andreescu into that conversation.
100%.
2019 winner.
Bench is the same, around the same.
Bench is a little bit older. She didn't. Did she final 2020 something? She didn't win it, but
my point is, I think haven't heard much from her since.
Yeah,
my point.
Well, quick one on Belinda though. She was out all this year. She had a kid. She just came back. She played in the 125 this week. So yeah, she maybe we'll see Belinda popping out of here in 2025. But I think with both of those two players, the two finalists from the 2021 U.S. Open, I think it's important that prior to the both of them arriving in that final, I think is a bit of an anomaly. I don't think it has much to do with the tennis, kind of at large. I think it had to do with some weird things that happened in that tournament. I don't remember exactly who Emma played in the first round, but she almost didn't get out of the first round. I want to say she might have snuck past Donna Vekic in like a weird first round match that she had no business winning, because obviously she came through qualies, right? Qualified into the main draw, caught some kind of weird win in the first round. I mean, she won the match, all hats off to her, and then just went on a heater, right? 6 more wins, and then that's it. And then Layla had a more traditional, tough, underdog kind of upset after upset. I think she beat Serena in that tournament, actually. Maybe in the quarters, around the 16, something like that.
You could even argue that she picked early and had in my opinion, was the favorite going in of the two.
Sure. I mean, she was ranked around 50 at the time when she went into that tournament. Like, and Emma was nowhere, right? Emma came through qualies. So I would say, as opposed to what have the two of them done since then, I think it's more of a take the outlier out, look at their careers without those 2 to 3 weeks, and what are we talking about? Well, I don't think we're talking about either one of them.
Right.
Because neither one of them did anything prior, really.
Right.
I mean, Emma had a
pretty good,
and has not done like since, right? I mean, it's for various different reasons. Emma has faced a lot of injuries, but I think the injuries might be indicative of what the cost is to perform at this level on a consistent basis, right?
Also, like a lot of young players, overhauled her whole coaching staff at that time. Pulled a I'm here now. I'll be calling the shots from now on, which a lot of young players tend to do, and end up, in my opinion, put themselves in their careers in some tailspins. And just for whatever reason, I think that culture for at least a year, just going through 2 or 3 coaches and trying to kind of get her team right. Again, long story, and we don't know what was brewing behind the scenes to that point.
Right.
Michael also fired his coach after the first championship, and he did okay. You know what I mean?
It worked out.
Doug Collins is a great coach, but at some point, enter Phil Jackson, right? And we see 5 more on the 5 more rings on the finger. So I understand sometimes a coaching change is needed. I just getting back to the players. My question more for you is youth more served, or is it really that 25 through 28, 28 through 30 that players are starting to peak now in this era, again, post GOAT? And my bigger question is, the Matrix has reloaded, who are those, I'm big on the rivalries, we've talked about this before, the rivalries started to kind of show themselves. Is it really Iga and Arena, and everybody else is the contender in that top 10, and then everybody else is just playing for a good tournament?
Yeah, I mean, I want to unpack the first part first, right? About the why we might be seeing, why do I think we're seeing this? It's hard for the young ones to break in, especially into the upper echelons of women's tennis. And I think kind of going back to what we mentioned about Serena, really, I think that is the lasting legacy that she has, is the way that she changed the women's game to where power is no longer a tool, a weapon. It's a requirement, right? And when you're coming out of the times when a Martina Hingis could kind of craft her way through, or a Caroline Wozniacki could defend her way to a Grand Slam, that just that's not the case anymore. You have to be able to hurt, and quite likely off both wings, to
have a serve.
And have a serve, right? So that's the Serena trifecta, right? I mean, add a couple feathers to your cap if you can actually, pinch one off at the net here every now and again.
Yep.
But I think that's the long-lasting Serena legacy, is like this is now what's required, because a lot of young girls came up watching her and saying, this is how I want to play. And then you got to get fast enough to do it, right? Your feet got to defend your own shots, right? So they're training for this. And now we're seeing that if you can't provide that level of firepower, and this is the important part, I think, week in and week out over time, right? Because tennis is a very grueling sport. And someone at the age of 16 or 17, like Amira Andreeva, right? Can she? I mean, one, she doesn't have that much firepower yet. She hasn't filled into her full frame yet.
Sure.
But then also asking her still growing and maturing body to then do it for 40 weeks out of the year, man, that's a hard ask. It's probably as hard for someone at the age of 17 to do it as it is for someone at the age of 40 to do it.
And yet Sharapova did it. So I come back to
Sharapova's the Hall of Fame, though.
No question. But unfortunate for Drema, the benchmark, and the benchmark's high. It doesn't hurt that he was 6'2" and had and was as you say, still growing into her very long and very powerful frame. But arguably, Maria was faster at 17. When she first got on the scene, and was more powerful and slower. Let's face it, as she got older and more composed and was more accurate. I don't want to go down too much of memory lane, but one Jennifer Capriati at 14, reached the semis of Wemby, and then took a 3 or 4 year, gone their 5-year hiatus in tennis, right? And then came back and did again, got to World Stage. So we understand. I guess the point I'm making is it's not out of question to say it can't be done. It's been done in recent history. It's just to say fewer are doing it now. And I was a strength coach for many years as well. I get the demands of the sport more than most. I get the level is so much more physical now, I get that way more than most. I simply say a lot of these younger players are still on the TBD list to me, more than they are true contenders. And mind you, still marinating, still getting good. I hate keeping praise before it's due, and I hate keeping expectations even worse before they're truly apropos, because that can be the death knell of a player. They're all of a sudden supposed to be at this level, and let's be honest, it was, as to your point, it was just a good 2 weeks of tennis, and that may be hard to duplicate, until they're ready and show that they can do it again. Becker did this early in his career, won back-to-back Wimbledons. Becker's game wasn't ready. He wasn't. He was still a kid. He was still a kid with diving on the court for volleys. We see it now as a thing, but Becker didn't win a Grand Slam somewhere else. I want to say 5 to 7 years later. Now he was still a good player during that time, but wasn't as fast, wasn't as unorthodox. People were getting his game back. He had to develop backhand. He had to build returns. And the game was changing all around him. I say it to say, there's another good example player that grew into his very large and very powerful frame that had to figure out how to play this game. And aside from a one hit or one, and let's face it, a one shot and one surface wonder.
And that's the to borrow a phrase from the great Northeastern philosopher one, Sean Carter. You made it a hot line, I made it a hot song. You can put together a good 2 weeks, but that's why we see you can pop up and Bianca Andreescu can win a Grand Slam. And Murata Kanu at age, what was she, 18, 19, win a Grand Slam. Leila Fernandez was 19 at the time when that final occurred, got there. But to do it over the course of 12 months and then find yourself here at the end of the year inside the top 50, inside the top 20, that's a much different ask. And I think that goes back to what you're talking about. And that's just kind of the big takeaway that I've seen this year. And it's starting to solidify. Of the 4 ladies, I think there are 4 ladies who are, under the age of 21, ranked inside the top 50. Obviously, there's Coco. We talked about Mira a little bit. Linda Noskova, she took out Iga in Australia. Didn't really do much outside of that. But and then Dina Schneider. Do you know much about Schneider? I like.
Saw very little ever. I think I saw the maybe one match. I didn't Russian girl, right? I think she's I've seen a little bit of her. Yeah.
She went to North Carolina State. She's an NC State Wolfpack.
Wolfpack, yeah.
Wolfpack, of the Wolfpack. Love a lefty.
And
you
like these lefties, don't you?
I'm partial. But yeah, so that's kind of I think that outside of the big hitters, the top of the class, if you will, and we'll get to them next. Those are kind of the things that I see. It's like there's this group of, I think it's a very actually tidy group of about 10 women at the top of the game right now that you could almost bank on. And that's one of the like I mentioned earlier, watching a Grand Slam on the women's side, I get to kind of peek around the first few days to see what the interesting matchups are, because they have Grand Slam champions littered all over the place. Because I gotta know, once it gets to the business end, you're gonna see a lot of these ladies there. And that's you're getting a little bit of maybe the best of both worlds, right? Of the top 10 players, you assume you're going to see 6 in the quarters, and that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
If they all last that long. And take me back briefly, my other Matrix Reloaded question. In your opinion,
I
feel like we're trading places today. the Matrix that's reloaded, I would submit Iga and Arena have, in a sense, the dust is starting to settle. In a sense, they have now said, it's our game. The rest of you are playing catch up. And I know that anybody could beat me, but it's becoming far and far less likely that it will happen. But yes, will, not so sure. There's less blood in the water. Sabalenka has gotten her mind right. Iga was always tough to beat. I don't care who you were, what time of the day it was, on any surface. And now that Sabalenka is starting to express that dominance, starting to get confident with herself, and not fighting against herself, I feel
that's a big one.
Is one of with all, if anything, she's the Ivan Drago, so to speak, of Serena. She's just everything. She's taller. She's a little, just a tiny bit stronger, maybe not as fast, but in the early days with Serena, but it's everything just as well, if not a little bigger. So for her to be calm and for her to be locked in, buddy, it's her match to lose.
Yeah.
With that said, now again, and that top 5 contender list is deep. I mean, Jessica Pegula is nobody's slouch. And I want to say career high number 3. I mean, the girls got it's as solid of a player against anyone any day of the week as it comes. Coco just won the Open last year. And quite frankly, to some, a disappointing year. To me, pretty good follow-up year for an unbelievable year. Still in the conversation. Still won a couple of titles at the high level.
Year-end championship.
Still won year-end championship. To my point, certainly not a bad year. And now you're looking at, especially if you look through the context of Raducanu and Fernandez. So I say to you, and we haven't even talked about Vondrousova, who won Wimbledon a year or so ago. We haven't even talked about Muchova. We haven't talked about, who was the other young lady? Zhang. I mean, we haven't talked about players that are legitimate, players that could win Indian Wells or Miami or tomorrow. So that to me that's a pretty tough list. So the matrix has been reloaded. My question, is it Iga and Arena? Do the contenders have a real chance of knocking them off their perch and making this a 3-4 woman race? Who else am I missing in the contenders that you think under the radar? And I know you're probably going to say Navarro, which I love. Is there another player that could come through and bring the wrecking ball?
Yeah. Okay. So let's start from the top about who's in the party, right? At the top of women's tennis. I'm going to go ahead and start from what I believe is, and I say this with all respect, and I'm going to give myself a chance to unpack it here. Coco Gauff has set the floor so high because on her worst day, she's still able to semifinal a Grand Slam. She can play bad. She can play bad tennis and still beat all but maybe 3 people in the world. And she can play bad tennis and still maybe beat 2 of those 3. It's just that she has
on their lesser day.
If they're off a little bit, right? She can bring you down into the mud, and she will if it gets into the mud, she's better off there than, let's say, Arena is, right? And I think their record reflects that. They're 4-4 against each other, which is kind of startling, all things considered, but not so much when you think about what she does so well as far as how well she moves, how well she can defend and even hurt on that backhand side. And she's starting to get to the point where it's not the forehand that's going to kill her. It's that serve's starting to get a little bit wonky. But I mean, she put it together well at the end of the year. So I think Coco is the floor, and the floor is like 3 or 4 in the world, right? That's the cutoff right there. Now, right above that is where it starts to get surface and matchup dependent, I think, between Iga, Arena, and let us not forget Elena Rybakina, right? And I think Rybakina, her health, assuming it was a health issue, not some weird stuff going on with her coach issue last year.
Sure.
But she's now working with Goran, feeling good, coming into the new season. That's the one that Rybakina is Sabalenka's foil, right? She's the only person on the tour that can legit just take the racket out of her hands. Many times has beaten her 2-2. Like it's like, I see you over there, and she can take Arena's hardest, most quality hit ball and send it back to the other corner with no problem whatsoever. With dead eyes and no sweat. Like just doesn't care. The Arena and Iga part of it is there are 2 women in the world that can just hit Iga off the court on the right surface, and that's Arena and Elena Rybakina, right? But how often do we get those surfaces? Not that often.
Not as often. Not certainly more represented in the slams than in the season.
Exactly. So, and then that leaves Iga with, currently reigning supreme on clay, and being able to kind of dust it up with anybody. That as long as the clay isn't a weird scenario like Madrid where it's really fast, or so she
and blue one year,
and then she also was down match points to Naomi Osaka in the first round of the French Open this year.
Right.
Roof closed, right? Fast.
Right.
It's like very unique situations like that where where you can you can't get her, but she got out of it, right? So, and then obviously, like Coco just doesn't have anything to hurt her, so she handles Coco pretty well. So that's the thing about the women's side right now, especially at the top. And that's not even to get into like, oh, Barbora Krejcikova did win another Grand Slam this year because she can pop off and do that when she wants to. And Queen
Krejcikova to me is a lot like Vondrousova. They just so streaky, and when they're on, you just don't play their style very often. Another lefty for your Vondrousova, who I really liked her game, and because he was so freewheeling off that side, I don't think many people had played a player that was taking so many chances, and I'm so happy it worked out for. It's I say not to take your point. Are they true contenders for Grand Slams? Clearly for some 1000s, clearly to beat them on a head-to-head. Are they contenders for slams this year? Which to me, I think is great. I think it only helps the women's tennis, the parity of the game. I think Coco is certainly of that caliber. I think Rabatina is certainly right there. I think all the players you mentioned, 100%. I'm curious about the number you said. You said after 4. And I'm thinking, okay, let's take Iga and Arena out. Are there 4?
Oh, if you take them out.
Right. And or 5. And I mean true contenders have done it, have done a head-to-head. Are there that we can look to this year and
could win a Grand Slam?
And could win a Grand Slam. And are there 1 or 2 more that have not yet that could? And that's what I'm calling the Emma Navarro category. I think the year just ran out before she had time to really kind of get going. Had there been 2 more slams or the year continued, when it ended, I think she was on pace to do some damage. And we'll see. Can she now crank it up again? My question to you though, give me the 4, if or 5, and then are there 2 others, if not more, in your opinion?
Yeah. So okay. So you have Iga and Arena, right? So there's 2 off the table right there. Rebecca has done it before. I think she can do it again. Yep. All right. At that point, you have Coco, which I think Coco will. Let's put it this way: 1 out of every 8 slams, I think Coco's going to get one.
Yep.
So
I would say more than that, but I agree.
Maybe
with
1
you.
out of 6. She's
right.
not big on for maybe 1 out of 5, 1 out of 6 somewhere there. Not 1 a year, but like every other year, she should be picking up 1.
Right.
And then after that, I feel like Jessie Pegula. I feel like I don't think she's got enough firepower to get through 7 matches of doing what she needs. Like and I don't know. I can't really explain why I feel this way. Obviously, she got through her quarterfinal barrier at the U.S. Open. She got through her ego problem at the U.S. Open, and then made it all the way to the final. And
at the Alvin.
Yeah, she did. And but I just feel like that was her chance, probably.
Yeah.
But
maybe
I don't see her.
That was her Dominic team. Zverev Open. For her to win, and perhaps may not see many of those opportunities coming forward. I personally think Pegula has the firepower for sure. I question, as I've always questioned, the athleticism to hang at that level. I question, is Father Time catching up to Jessica? One of the best American players in a long time, has been as gritty, as solid, as tell me what I can't do, I'll prove you that I can. I mean, doesn't need the money, has played through surgeries, injuries, from, she's had 2 knee surgeries, a back surgery. I mean, the girl does not need to play. Her kids don't have to, her kids don't have to work. And she's out there grinding one of the toughest sports of all time. I mean, and through injury, and continues to do it on her own because she can. I mean, I could not be more. I met Jessica years and years ago. A good friend of mine was her coach. Well, you remember Adam Gusky and Angela Cargill, probably have some compatriots of yours during the academy days. So they were instrumental in her when she was first getting out there on tour before Michael Joyce and so on. So I know Jess well and could not be more proud of her. So anything I'm saying is completely on a surface level of, we're just looking at X's and O's here. I think that if anybody has my vote to win on an emotional note, it's Jessica Pegula. It's Jessica Pegula, even over Coco. You heard it right here. just because of my personal relationship with her. But that said, looking at the window may be closing simply because of age. The window might be closing simply because now you're a step slower. We've never thought of Jessica as fast. Now we're in a situation where she may be hitting herself out of her own coverage area, and then that gets tough. But I think you're going to have to take it from Jessica. She's not going to give it to you. There are four that can on a given day more, but
Yeah.
on a given, there's four that can do it routinely now. But those same four, she does have wins against. So it's one of those things where I think he's certainly in the contender category, to be sure. My question is, are there two more that I'm missing? Who, and if so, who are they?
Yeah. So from my standpoint, right? You quickly mentioned Karolina Muchova, right? I'm gonna go on record right here. I've said it to many people who know me privately. She is my favorite tennis player to watch, and that is hands down. I like watching her more than I like watching Carlos Alcaraz, and everyone knows how much I love watching Karolina Muchova play tennis. She plays the tennis that I dream about playing.
She's not even a lefty. Wow.
She's not even a lefty.
Wow.
Girl, that woman is so smooth. She is so
Yeah.
smooth. She is the female
She's a reincarnation
incarnation
of Chris Evert. Every time I see her, she's Chris Evert in as a dead ringer, doppelganger, whatever you call it. Every time I look at her, I'm like, God, Chris Everett had an illegitimate child back in the day. They want to tell them about it. Every time I see her.
my issue with Mooks is that when she does have a big match problem. She has this like horrible record in finals. She'll wow you and amaze you all the way there, but when it's time to cut the check, she's kind of like Ons Jabeur, right? Where all that magic kind of dries up when it's time to make balls and then step up and finish points. You know what I mean?
I was just gonna say it. Ons had that exact situation before in a tournament that was hers in the making at Wembley. I completely agree. So Muchova is or is not in your contender list. Let me go back to my question.
She's not in my contender list. That's because I think winning is a skill. Winning championships is a skill. Getting to you've talked about this briefly in other episodes that we've done, that you've talked about Ivan Lendl's finals record, right? He lost a lot in finals. Now eventually he started figuring it out, right? But I think winning
continue to get there.
I think winning in finals is a skill, and she's no spring chicken either. I think she's 28 or 29. So while that peak range for it seems to be on the women's tour right now is kind of 24 to 28, for people to hit their peaks, she's kind of getting towards the back end of it. She's had some injuries, so on and so forth. So while I enjoy the show, like I'll cancel things to watch Karolina Muchova play tennis. Am I putting my money on it? No, I'm not putting my money on it. Yeah,
you're buying the ticket to watch. You're not placing a side bet on the match.
Yeah, Queen Win is the other one that is the one that if she gets the right draw, like as in if she doesn't have to go through Arena Sabalenka because she's got a Sabalenka problem, I think she's the one that can win a Grand Slam. Like I think she can. Of the ones who have not won one, I think she's the next up to win one.
I think she might be outside of Coco. He might be, and I still call her Rabikina. She might be the next sleeper right below the surface of the water that will just literally punish you through sheer lack of errors, accuracy, and will not miss a ball. And you will pay for a loose game, period. And she will not give it back to you. And so I like that. I like her level of play. I like her tenacity in the court. Covered the court pretty well. You know what I mean?
Moves pretty well.
In a very, and I hate if I sound any ways old school or even quasi racist, but you've never seen a ton of athletic Chinese people in terms of just oozing speed, power, and agility.
Fair.
And she moved very well. I mean, just almost, dare I say, very fluid. You know, I mean, not just fast and not just efficient, which to me is almost a almost a little bit of a dig. She is very fluid around the court, and quite frankly, very comfortable with anybody's ball, with the exception of when the rally gets bigger. Against someone a person like a Sabalenka that can bring it and hit through her. You know what I mean? Which is only a few people can do consistently to match. You know what I mean? So that's another
Yeah,
problem
the
too.
the issue that she's going to run into here is that she seems to be about the fifth best player in the world. I mean, her combined
Right.
record against Sabalenka, Swiatek, Goff, and Rybakina, if I can do
Right.
quick math, is like 1 in 13. Like
Yep.
it's yeah, it needs work. It needs work. So that's her task. That's her
Yep.
next level to get into that competing on the last few days of a Grand Slam. And so it's fun right now. It's fun. Kind of moving away from the ones that are, that we think are going to be challenging for Grand Slams next year. We did briefly talk about Mira Andreeva. We talked about Karolina Muchova, a little bit about Dina Schneider. Are there any other players that you are excited to watch that have had that caught your eye this year?
Navarro caught my eye. I knew her from before when she played junior tennis here in the South.
She's from
Before
South
she went
Carolina.
up,
That's right.
yeah, she
Yeah.
was her parents had bought the Love to Play the LTP Academy. They moved it there, and just her and her brother were both very good tennis players. A lot of the boys I coached were playing her older brother. And I remember her coming up and she was playing up in the 18s. Obviously, she was like 14, 15. We all knew she was going to be good. I don't think most of us knew how young she was, always playing up, as
Okay.
that player tends to do. And then she went off to Virginia, of course, and played well. I've been watching her for a while, and I from literally watching her from on the courts, and then to see her continue to get good, I was very impressed that she shot up to top 10 that quickly and had such good results against many players.
Mhm.
A la the rise that Isner hit right after college when he had his
Sure.
run
Yeah.
at DC. Right, it wasn't that I didn't think he was good; it was that he beat so many quality players back to back to back to edify and to substantiate where he was. And so I think she's done that to her own degree, obviously younger and in some ways more distinctly. John leaned in on the serve and played great tennis, especially his first couple of years. And obviously after that, he was a top 10 player from there on in, and still holds the record, Big John, at Wemby, and it'll never be broken out. They changed the rules. So
Yep.
that's that one for the record books. But my thing for Emma is that I don't think we've seen all that she can do. I've seen her play attacking tennis. I've seen her play counterpunch. I've seen her play top mouse. I've seen her strike once she gets the right conditions and gets the right ball. So it's one of those things where she can do a little bit of everything, which I like. And I think that once she gets comfortable, start seeing a little more tennis from her. That I think I think she's one of those sleepers that I said that's not there yet. That will be soon. Hard to say about Paulini. I like her. I haven't seen enough of her to really give her a true day in court.
Mhm.
I say the same about Miss Stearns and a few others. They're coming. They're coming. But I think they need to. I think they need to be in the oven a little longer to really get good and get up to temp. They're just it's too early, and I hate heaping praise or expectation on a young player. Let them continue to develop. And hey, buddy, your matches are going to come. And trust me, that your time to get that title belt will be there much before you want it to. And then we're going to expect that from you again the next year, right? So it's one of those things where, I'd love to be talking about her getting better every year versus like I'm talking about Raducanu now. Where's she been? You know what I mean? What happened? And let's face it, Raducanu may never get back in the top 10, in my opinion, ever.
Right.
And
Yeah. I think that'd be
there's
the
just
betting
back to
favorite there.
100% to my point, blood in the water. And again, so my point, I'd much rather have a player take the extra year or two. Can't take more than 5. I think the women's game, the episode we talked about 5 years. I think the women's game is 3 years, to be honest. So, but take that extra 6 months, get your game right, be good at all surfaces, be ready to play that player, period. Because there's going to be a bad day. There's going to be an injury. There's going to be some, you will have that gift draw open up before you realize it. Be ready when opportunity knocks. Is to me, in this post GOAT era, the GOATs have gone. You've got two others in the making, and I still feel the gelatin hasn't set yet. The Jello is not yet set. You could still get in there, if you played the right way. And I don't know, uh, especially breaking into that group. Now, not necessarily to the top, to winning a slam, but breaking into the contender group, I think it's still got some room left.
So I think Jasmine Paolini is a really good example of, how different the women's game is right now to the men's game as far as the age component, right? So she's been around 50, 60 in the world for a couple of years, and then something happened where it clicked for her. She started to just started to believe. And then we get to a situation where she wins a tournament in the UAE. I think she won the Masters event, or the 1,000 or the 500 there, and then goes on a burner this summer. Back-to-back French Open, Wimbledon finalist, and then did pretty well at the U.S. Open as well. I think she made round of 16, maybe quarterfinals. So, whether or not I find that because she did it so late, but was able to put it together over the course of 6 months, maybe 7 months, I think, and then also played fantastic at Billie Jean King Cup as well. I think you're going to see her continue to be a mainstay for the next, I'll give it 2 or 3 years. She is 28, right? She's not a spring chicken, but I feel a tennis standard spring chicken. Let me fully say that. But I think she can, because she's an adult, I feel like she'll know what to do and how to best take her results this year, replicate what went into it to get similar output. Maybe she doesn't finish top 5 in the world again, but I could see her. I think she's definitely she's probably a top 10 player, hanging around 8, 9, 10, somewhere around there seems about right for her for the next few years, assuming she doesn't get hurt. But you did mention Peyton Stearns. I really enjoy watching Peyton Stearns play. She's like the Jen Brady 2.0.
100%. 100%. And again, I'm gonna have to cut you off. And she has to do what Jen Brady does or did before I can say 2.0. But I'm with you, and I totally understand what you're saying. I just hate giving the praise before it's due. Do I think she's going to be good? She's already good. I think the girl's going to be wonderful. I love. Never met a point she didn't like. I mean, likes to smack it. I feel like Jen, save for some injuries and some other things in life, I thought she could still be in that contender list. As big as her serve was and as big as she was hitting the ball, I just felt like right after pandemic hurt her fit.
Oh yeah.
When she was playing some of her best ball. I mean, I loved it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's that's where Peyton reminds me a lot of Jen, hopefully, and a little bit younger, comparatively when they broke onto the scene. So I hope she can stay healthy. And speaking of Emma Navarro and Peyton Stearns, actually, this was a really good year for the American women, right? You've got 7 women finishing inside the top 50 this year, which is, Stearns being the lowest ranked of them at 47. But I mean, 3 in the top 10, put Danielle Collins in there at 11. So what do you see? What is there about this group? Or maybe we can talk a little bit about what's going right within that particular, on the women's side anyways, when it comes to the American women. Is it just, are they all just kind of different cases, or are we seeing something?
I think so. I think timing, and I think just a sheer, I'm going to say it again, post-GOAT era. Because of the vacuum that's now been open, there are so many different players that are now ascending to the top. And that GOAT, for lack of a better term, puts a stopper on a lot of the ascent of any future player. Now that GOAT's no longer there. That draw is now more open. And now you're starting to see those players have a true ascent to the top, or at least a chance. And some of the others who weren't not ready, weren't really that good as far as championship level, are now yielding to some of the players that are saying, hey, I want a little piece of this. I want to put my hat in the ring. So I think what we're seeing is just a little more of a timing situation. Each of them has gotten a different path. Coco got there straight from junior straight to pros. Emma went to college, was a standout All-American, NCAA champ at UVA. You've got so many different types. You mentioned your girl, Wolfpack. There's so many different ways that women have gotten there. And you've got, some of the, if you look at each of those ones you talk about, you heard it right here. I feel, and I don't think enough credit has been given to Jess Pegula for helping to give Coco her start with the doubles and some of the tournaments that she played early on, way back in the day. Just helping that next player get up to that level. Would Coco gotten there anyway? Sure, eventually. But she gave her a foothold and gave her some momentum and gave her some, that you had gotten before that. And I think a lot of credit needs to go to a player like a Jess Pegula for that. But if you look at those two or three players with Navarro, Coco, and Jessica, very different paths to get there, and Jess was just a little engine that could all the way to number 3 in the world, right?
Right.
So there's and obviously the eldest of the three, I just feel like each of them are a little bit of a different situation, and very fortunate we are as Americans to have these young players play. And we're very fortunate to have them all at the same time because we're really fun to watch. I feel for the American audience, especially, you like to see the stars and stripes on the side of someone's name when you go out there watching some tennis. And I think that keeps butts and seats, and that keeps the sponsors and everyone, especially at our home slam, active and boosted, and directly comes back to American tennis. So to me, that's the nice thing. I don't see. I think USTA has done a much better job of canvassing for talent. I don't think everything has been a development arm of theirs. I think they've given more opportunities. I think they've mentored more. They've given spotlight to more, but I don't think they've done anything else different than the last 25 years. They're just much of the fruit of the labor and much of the fertile field, so to speak, has produced a bumper crop, happens to be this year. And each one of them, in my opinion, each one of them has been a product of a solid coach or coaches and development more so that it's been the USTA Federation, uh, helping those individual players get there.
Gotcha. I like that. That's interesting. And I know we've teased this before, and I don't mind teasing it just one more time. American tennis over the last 25 years is something that we're both very passionate about, making sure
100%.
we take a deep dive into that, and talking to the people about where we've been, where we're going, and what the future might look like on both the women's and men's side on American tennis.
I'd like to add one more point to that when
Yeah,
we come
please do.
back to that issue. College tennis has not gotten its due for the development and the platform that it has given players. We talked Jen Brady a minute ago, Danielle Collins, Emma Navarro now. There's so many players that have had success at that level that I feel, much like the men's game when, years ago when players were starting to go through. I coached the top players, Sko had wanted Sko to go to college at least 1 year, maybe 2, both maturity level wise, as well as to establish himself at that level, right? I felt the pro tour was just a huge jump. He was playing against men. The pro tour was getting longer in their span and being at the top. And while the money and the contracts and stuff were there, I did not feel that it was in the best interest of a young player who was going to need to be out there 6+ years to really make it, was well served by jumping over the whole college tennis. I feel college tennis deserves its due for what the platform of the international platform that it has given players. I feel like the college coaches are younger now. They're former players themselves. And I feel like we're getting out of the good old boy network and the old, I'm going to call it old coaching style. Just make balls, just get that ball back in play one more time. They're starting to develop these kids' games. Kids are coming in playing 6, 3 years later playing 1, a year later playing pro tennis, top 50. That's a huge testament to the coaching that's going on in college tennis today. Not everywhere. It's not everywhere yet, but players are coming out of nowhere. And I feel like that's a testament to the college system continue to prove it that it's viable. And I feel like there for a while, player was almost, especially the women's side, wasn't looked at as good enough, so you went to college. And I feel like we're changing that narrative a lot now with these players coming out of school and having a chance to win the tour. Not to say you can't go pro, Coco's done it, but I feel the Cocos are a lot more, especially in the United States, it's a lot more rare, her trajectory than it has been, at least in the last 10 years, than the Jen Brady, the Emma Navarro, Danielle Collins, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, the college, those are really, really good points. And they've I've got a bunch of questions now. And this is like that this as soon as you start talking about college tennis and all the different layers, you know, with college tennis now in the States offering opportunities for players to come in,
Yeah,
train, world-class facilities, get really good competition, participate on the USTA Challenger circuit as well, have an opportunity to play in professional events. It's becoming more and more of an avenue, more and more of a true feeder system into the Pro Tour
100%.
on both men's and women's sides for not just American players, but also for international players as well. And so
Right,
as you get more and more quality players into the pool, the overall talent level goes up and it becomes more and more competitive. And I think we've heard a
right,
lot about the system itself, college tennis itself, being a vehicle that could produce more ready to go professional players. But this is the
right.
first time that I've heard someone mention the impact that the new wave of college coaches has. Like a former, I want to say, we're the same age, but we weren't on the same courts. Myself and Bobby Reynolds, one of
Sure,
your
sure,
former players. He,
sure.
obviously had a very strong career both in college and then I think it did himself proud on the Pro Tour as well. But
50.
top 50. He's been coaching at Auburn for quite some
Sure.
time now. It's been
Yep.
almost
At least
at
10
least
years,
10
if,
years,
if, if not,
maybe
if
close to
not more than
15.
that.
Yeah.
100%.
So, but
100%.
having players like that going into coaching and then staying at a program can only do wonders for getting that kind of information. You referenced Sko. Sko has been a college coach for some years now as well.
For many, many years. And I feel, I mean, even players outside of our own network, right? Drake Bernstein did a phenomenal job at UGA with those
Yep.
players. And Jamie Hunt just took over for Manny Diaz, a year or so ago. There's so many good young coaches that are coming up through the ranks and helping these players get to a top level. I've got to plug in here that I think the I personally feel, and this is me, I personally feel they have brought almost the extension of, we talk about this all the time, the 20 and under academy, the 20 and under,
Right.
in a sense, you weren't finished, right? You weren't physically mature enough to truly finish. And now here you are at a point where we're starting to really put all this together again. And college becomes that elite academy, right? Where
Right.
all
Yeah.
of your
Yeah.
top players go. And you heard it right here. And you heard it right here. Tennis is one of those sports that needs it. Maybe not in the majors, maybe so. You can make your case for it in the D League and off Triple A for baseball, and there's a system they used to have for many, many years. But you heard it right here. Tennis needs it. You need to get your skill sharpened. You don't know what you don't know, and you have not performed yet at that level. Many players that were big hitters, aggressive, um, needed to fine tune and develop some consistency. The consistency players had to get better at hitting through the ball. The player that was big at 12, that by the time they were 16, same size as everybody else, the player that grew late, at some point when so many juniors playing up, 12s are moving to 14s, 14s sometimes skip over 16s altogether, play up in the 18s, you start to lose that. How proven are you? And then you take those first few couple of tough losses, and then you kind of see, well, maybe they weren't that good. I would submit maybe they didn't play enough tennis before they got to that stage. And
Right.
if they played a little more and were proven, now we're going to see a better level of tennis out of those players because they have, in fact, proven themselves. I
And
remember
that's what.
talking to Ginepri one time about, I don't want to
No, go
get
please do.
long-winded here. Ginepri told me he had about a 5-year, you know, where he did not make a big crack at some of the slams, but he kept telling himself, mind you, he ran into Agassi 2 opens in a row. I mean, that's a tough, during Agassi's peak, so it's a tough
Right.
person, one of the goats of his era that he had to get through. He told me, but I had won 5 challengers, so I knew it was only going to be a matter of time. Guy gets to the semi of the Open one year, has a phenomenal run. Now, what does that tell you? Well, it tells you that the guy had matches under his belt up until that point in time. Not many players, in my opinion, go, whether it was the old school pro circuit, top college. And because of that, you don't have those wins. You don't have that confidence that I can win at that next level. we always think of pro as the only next level, but in my opinion, that next level, it's tough, and I think college needs a compliment and needs its voice heard. We talked the other day in one of the episodes about the tennis commissioner, the ITA having a seat at that table,
Yep.
and my reason for that was it's an international sport for one, and for number two, college has helped spin out a bunch of players that we would not have seen otherwise that have made their chance on the tour, and it's a pathway for the majority of the top players to play, and it's economically viable for many. And I think that's a
Right.
big deal for us to talk about, that keeps these players playing. And I think it deserves its due. I think the format is phenomenal. I loved it. I coached it myself, played it. I know you've been saying we love watching some good matches. When NCAA's come around, you're always excited to watch the true format of team tennis, right, in the
Right.
college setting. But I just think it needs to have that level, of just appreciation, notoriety, and be looking for those top players. We got to get back to the point where we're starting to give those wild card tournaments. I'll come back. I'll get off my stump, but don't sleep on the tennis commissioner and that whole series. When we come back to that, I have a whole thought about the qualifying and the challenger and how college tennis could play a huge role into that, and call it a winter NCAA's open format that I think could be absolutely phenomenal, that could really turn the tennis world on its head if done right.
I like that. I like that. We're gonna wrap it up here. We're gonna wrap it up here. But we can't leave the people out without taking a trip to Coach's Corner. So, Torrey Hawkins, I submit to you, what is the biggest opportunity in women's tennis? If you can add one thing to your game, what is the thing that probably pays the most dividends on the women's side today?
Serve. Easy answer. The serve. The biggest weapon in the women's game is the return of serve. Unfortunately, the biggest weakness in the women's game is the second serve. If you were to develop a very, very high-level second serve, you would be better at whatever level you're playing. I don't care if you are an aspiring pro trying to break into the top 200. I don't care if you're a top college player trying to break into your own lineup. I don't care if you are a free five lady trying to play high in the lineup on your own Alta team or your USCA team. If you develop a serve, it is a game changer. I think more young girls should be out there throwing the football with their brother and sister and dad and mom. More young girls should be out there throwing in general. I think more girls should be spending more time on their serves instead of hitting ground strokes to the blue in the face. The serve is a game changer. I've seen so many girls over time that had a serve and were relevant, and the ones that didn't were just, the days of Elena Dmitrieva and having, 23 double faults and Wemby are over. You have to have a serve. To your point, Serena has brought that to the point. And having a serve is the single biggest difference maker you can have in your game. If you have to double down on one stroke, spend that much time on your serve in your practices, in my opinion, if you're not spending 20 minutes a day on your serve in some level of instruction, it is the point starter. It is the biggest point, in my opinion, of the women's game. And I think that if more, girls, junior girls, young ladies, professional women start to work that more in the game, and the ones who are there already have, they would see huge dividends in their game. You look at the top now, every single last one of them has a good serve. You might even say some of them have arrived at the top because they finally figured out their serve. Coco won the Open last year, and then year championship this past year. Arena's got a cannon.
Yep.
Iga beefed up her stuff.
Yep.
Mix it up. She has a good kick. She has a good slice. She's moved up. She can move it around. If she were to get her serve even better, buddy, Iga will continue her dominance over the women's tour. And the rest of the ladies we're talking about could only. Rybakina is Rybakina. If she gets a bigger serve, look out. I think she is that sleeper that everyone's talking about. She can hit it, but she's, again, that if there was one stroke for her to really spend some time on and really just to dial in, if she got that, buddy, she has everything else.
Yep. All right. Well, for those who are still with us, thank you for joining. Again, like, subscribe, follow, rate, review, all those things. And we'll catch you on the next one. Torrey, take
Love
care.
to hear some questions from our listeners too, Alvin. Love to hear some things they'd like to hear from, and maybe even on some of these wild and crazy tangents of ours, this whole tennis commissioner thing. I'd love to hear some thoughts from some other fellow fans, what they would like to see us not only talk about, but some of their own thoughts on the tennis commissioner idea and the season, television season of tennis.
That's right.
Throw that out there.
Flood those comments. All right, Coach. Take care.
You too. Thanks, Alvin.